So, hi Hannah, I'm gonna just start introducing things and we'll try and get through this without laughing too much all the way through. So, just to kind of kick off this informal kind of conversation between the two of us, obviously we work together all the time anyway, and we are putting this conversation together to commemorate 6 years essentially now of Superlative. And I can't believe how we've got to the 6 year mark already. So I know you've got some questions ready for me, so we'll have a bit of a kind of informal chat and I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself and to get started asking me some questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Perfect.
So, yeah, hi, I'm Hannah. I'm the marketing manager of Superlative since what, 2022?
Yeah.
4 years? Gosh. Um, yeah, I thought this would be a good idea as well because obviously you do the conversations with other writers, academics, professionals, and I thought let's put you in the hot seat
Oh,
and
good.
do some questions and yeah, just have a little like yap about Superlative. Um, so yeah, I'm going to start with the first question.
Mhm.
So yeah, for those of us who don't know you, and to refresh my memory on you, what is your background? Ross, how did we get here?
I have absolutely no idea most of the time how we got here. But yes, I've been a private tutor teaching English and editing academic essays and working on big projects and with university students for the past 5 years or so now. But I'm delighted to say that as of this year, as of 2026, I'm finally able to commit myself full time to Superlative, which, as you're probably tired of hearing me say, I've been wanting for quite some time now because I love the teaching and I love the editing, but this has really become our baby, hasn't it? We're really working hard to provide this for the writers and to keep pushing this. Obviously, as you know, I'm still completing my PhD at York St John on short story cycles. I'm an on-call firefighter now as well in Yorkshire. So there's other things going on, and I know we're going to talk more about that. I know you've got more questions to ask, but I'm excited to be able to finally give so much time to the journal. And it's been a long time getting here. 2020, I think we said this the other day, feels like a million years ago, but also just like yesterday. I'm not quite sure how that's happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, I founded Superlative back in 2020 while I was still in the Royal Air Force and I was undertaking my undergraduate and postgraduate degrees at the same time. Well, not at the same time, one after the other, I suppose. So it's always been a side project, albeit a very important one. But now I feel like finally it will actually get the time and the attention it deserves, and I'm really pleased and excited to be able to give it that.
Yeah, yes. Oh, same, because as you know as well, I've only just now recently become full-time as well. I was like working and doing other things alongside Superlative, so now Superlative is my main focus. It's like, yay! Because
Exciting,
it's
isn't it?
something
Yeah.
you're so passionate about, you just want to devote all your time to doing that rather than, you know,
Yeah.
whatever else is going on around you. So yeah, woo, team full-time.
Woo.
So yeah, as we said, Superlative has been going for 6 years.
Mhm.
Yay. Reminding back to the beginning, how exactly did Superlative come to be? Like, what made you decide, you want to set up a literary journal? And was there a process behind choosing the name Superlative?
Okay,
Lots of
yeah, yeah,
oh, sorry.
many questions taking me back in time. Yeah, so back in 2019, when I was still young-ish, and in hindsight, I was a carefree undergraduate student, and like we said a second ago, it feels all a very long time ago now. But one of my modules at university included visits and talks from industry professionals. And these included some editors from the very literary journals whom I'd been submitting my own writing to, obviously submitting in the hopes of publishing my own short stories, my own poems, and I'd had some success. And like all the writers will know, I'd had some rejections as well. But up until that point, during my academic studies and my creative writing and all that sort of thing, I I think probably like most creative writing students, I'd just been wholly focused on getting my own work published and essentially working towards becoming a professional writer. That was my goal essentially before I started my degree and as I applied and as I was going through the course. But I hadn't considered life from the other side of the desk and it hadn't even crossed my mind definitely that I might be able to run my own journal. That wasn't even on the horizon, to be honest. But as you know, probably all too well, when I get the bit between my teeth, it takes me about 3 seconds to put something into action.
Yeah.
So perhaps unsurprisingly, 3 seconds, maybe 3 days later, if I'm being generous, once I'd considered how fun and meaningful it sounded to bring writers' work to life for them, I basically decided to set up Superlative, and that was that. It was going to happen.
Hmm.
And and regarding the process of choosing a name, maybe, and I know for some writers for their stories, it can be almost an impossible process sometimes choosing a name, and it just doesn't make itself clear as you're writing. And at other times, you know the name before you've written the story. And
Hmm.
and for Superlative, it was amazingly simple. I think purely by chance or providence, maybe rather than for any other reason. Certainly not out of any kind of profound genius on my part. I considered what I might want to call this new journal that I'd created out of thin air. And within about 2 minutes, the name Superlative popped into my head with all its kind of double entendres and additional meanings and everything that I wanted the journal to be. And I honestly didn't consider, not for a moment, calling it anything else. And from that second, it was decided. And since then, we're 6 years down the line. I've never reconsidered it. I've never questioned it. It's just always felt perfect.
That's good. I mean, that's good you didn't have the agony of choosing a name
No.
because if me, yeah, I would have gone backwards and forwards. So thank God it's not me. Agony of choice. But no, superlative. That yeah, it flows off the tongue, doesn't it?
I hope so. Hopefully everybody likes it. Yeah.
Obviously, I know things were starting to look a bit different for you in the journal when I joined the team in 2022.
Yeah.
But what did that very first year look like for the journal? Once you've gotten all set up and taken your 2 minutes to choose the name.
Yeah, once I'd taken my 3 seconds to decide to do it and my 2 minutes to choose the name, um, it's it's felt like getting from there to here. I'm not quite sure how we've reached this point, to be honest. Sometimes it feels like a whirlwind. But I suppose the easiest way to summarize that first year is to say, and to be perfectly honest, that Superlative looked like an amateur side project because that's exactly what it was. I cared about it enormously, and obviously I still do. I'm confident that we provided an excellent service for our writers, and I'm very, very pleased with everything that we accomplished. But we took all of our submissions via email. We didn't have a website at first. I'd already established my teaching business, and the journal just piggybacked on that website basically. And when I did manage to set up a website specifically for Superlative, its first iteration again was amateur. As anyone who knows me well will tell you, my sister always says this: graphic design is absolutely not one of my strengths. I'm incredibly pleased and proud of Superlative's online presence now, in large part, to be honest, thanks almost entirely to you. But at the time, I had this lovely image in my head of the website being like a virtual cork board where I could electronically pin these notices and these comments and these ideas that people could come and read, and then they could pin things or respond to them. And in reality, it just looked shoddy and amateurish. But we'd been going for about 2 minutes, and I think most things start off that way as kind of passion projects. Somebody described it to me actually as a passion project in whatever year it was, 2021 or 2022, and they were absolutely right.
Mhm.
And also in those kind of early days, Superlative was only published in print. And I remember actually, I did give this deep consideration at the time compared to the name. I considered it pretty deeply because I knew from experience how amazing it feels to hold a physical thing containing your writing, to display it proudly on your bookshelves, to be able to gift your stories and poetry to friends and family. And I know my family, they things that I've published and have had published in print, they've got on the shelves at home, and I go and I see them all lined up, and it's just nice. It's if nothing else, it's just lovely to have that support. Um, and of course, we still print our annual journal, and this year, 2026, Growth will be printed towards the end of the year, and we'll have our launch event, and the writers, the contributors will get their copies. And I think it's so important to have tangible evidence of your efforts. But back in 2020, that was all we did. And it made us quite specialized, which I like, but our reach was a lot more limited because we didn't have that online presence that we have nowadays.
Mhm.
And finally, and I think really this is one of the most important things, I wanted to bring on other editors, not just for it to be me, basically. I was determined that Superlative would publish a range of really strong fiction. And actually, at the time, we didn't publish poetry back then. It was only fiction, short stories, flash
Mhm.
fiction, and mini sagas. But I really didn't want Superlative to become the Ross show. That was my main worry, to be honest. And that was never my intention at all. And in fact, as you know, and I think to your chagrin at times, I do my best to hide behind Superlative. I want Superlative to be the face of everything that we do, and absolutely it not to be me. So in that first year, I brought on two editors, people whom I knew and trusted from my university and academic studies. I'd worked with them before. I knew what kind of writers and editors they were. And we met in pubs in and around Cheltenham, where I lived at the time, and we had dinner and we had drinks while we were discussing the year's writers and while we were discussing the journal and the edits, and it was enormous fun. It's different now. I do still like that team element, as you know, when we go to our festivals and our events. I'm all about that kind of in-person team element. But that was all we had to begin with. We weren't using Submittable. We were taking everything by email. We literally took our notes physically on paper. That might feel alien possibly to some people nowadays, but we took our notes physically on paper to the pub, and I physically literally wrote down who the winners were and who the runners up were, and when we edited pieces. And I think there was one occasion where we were all in perfect agreement, and we all said, okay, yeah, I think this piece should win for these reasons, and we all lined up, and this piece should be the runner up for these reasons, and we all lined up. That happened once, and the rest of the time it was debates, should we say, drawn out discussions as to the pros and the cons, the merits of all the different pieces, and which one should win and which one should be runners up. And it was a much more lengthy process, but the whole thing was enormous fun.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. Because I think I've seen like some spreadsheets from maybe when you first started of like
Yes.
compiling names and like their pieces and like, oh, like, do we like them? Like what, are they runners up, etc. So
Yeah.
like that, and then compared to like using Submittable, where it's sort of, I say does it for you, but yes, like in a more organized.
It just provides that format, doesn't it? It's much easier. Yeah.
Yes, I couldn't imagine taking it all by email and just like, especially when you've got other things going on in your emails as well and having to,
Yeah.
yes. Thank God for
Yeah.
Submittable.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, Yeah, as you used to be a one-man show, Ross of all trades, as we've joked about in the past. You've juggled quite a lot alongside running a literary journal. Like, how do you manage to juggle all of your university studies, your deadlines, your private tutoring? You worked before as part of the RAF, and now you're a firefighter, like alongside Superlative. Tell us your secrets. How do you do it?
Um, so
I sound exhausted just saying
uh,
it.
we joke about this all the time, don't we? As you say, there's quite a lot going on, and I am always juggling lots of different things, and it's entirely my own fault. I know it is. I've never done very well with the standard Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I like doing lots of different things. I don't like getting stale, just doing the same stuff all the time. I have to schedule everything into my calendar, time off, when I'm going to see my friends, when I'm going to work, when I'm not going to work. And when I am scheduling time with my friends, I open my calendar, and a lot of them, it makes them feel sick, I think, how many different colors there are across the calendar. It's ridiculous. But it keeps me organized. Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, there isn't really any big secret to it. I suppose I do have a few rules, for want of a better word, that I set in place for myself to make sure I get everything done and at least attempt to keep on top of everything. I manage my time, and like I said with my calendar, stay organized as best as I possibly can. I like to set goals and to make lists, and I often won't let myself walk away or go to bed unless the task that I've set out to do is finished. And like I said, I absolutely live by my calendar. We use a shared calendar now, and I would genuinely be lost without it. Whether I'm planning when we're meeting or when I'm on call or planning in downtime, I absolutely have to plan in that downtime because otherwise it won't happen. If Yeah, if you're watching this or you're listening to this and you've ever been self-employed and you have a strong work ethic, you'll know that no matter how much you work, you're never finished. And I have to make myself put it down sometimes. I genuinely could work all day and all night every day and just be nowhere near done. So I have to draw lines in the sand sometimes.
Mhm.
And bouncing off that idea about work ethic, I'm all about working hard and working smart. I think sometimes I find taking breaks to go to the gym or to go climbing or something will definitely increase my productivity, increase the amount of work I can do. Um, I can sit in front of the computer for a few hours and get ungodly amounts of work done. But if I'm feeling like I'm going to sit there for 3 hours and only get half an hour's worth of work done, it's just not worth it. I haven't got the time to be unproductive like that. So that's when I'll step away and I'll go and do something else and come back when I know that 3 hours of work or worth of work is actually going to get what I want to do done.
Yeah,
So
no,
that's when kind of not working can make my work more productive, if that makes sense, can make me get more done in a short space of time because I've not got time to waste really.
rather than tearing your hair out over
Right.
something, just
Yeah,
do
absolutely.
coming back when you know you're ready to sort of do the job. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and I'm sure everyone who's listening or watching has experienced this when you're staring at the same screen or the same project or whatever it is for hours and hours and hours on end, and you just don't feel like you're making any headway. I haven't got time for that to happen, so I have to make sure I'm in the right headspace to get the work done. And even with all of that, I get overwhelmed sometimes and feel as though my to-do lists just keep getting longer, no matter how much or how hard I seem to work. And no matter how much I seem to tick off it, they get longer rather than shorter. I finish with 60 things on the list rather than 50 things at the end of the day. And all I've done is work all day. It seems to be impossible. And when that happens, I've got a 2 minute job rule that I use. So that ridiculously long to-do list often is 50% full of jobs that will take no more than 2 minutes to complete, I find. And they're on the list more so that I don't forget about them than for any other reason. So if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'll set aside an hour and complete 30 of those jobs. The little niggly jobs that otherwise get ignored. And they don't even have to be work related things. They could just be life admin, the stuff that ends up in the kitchen drawer. Just getting a load of those done makes me feel a whole lot better, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm conscious that I'm going on now, but maybe I suppose finally one last thing. I'm quite lucky, if that's the right word, that I don't need very much sleep. So again, we joke about this. Don't, don't get me wrong. If I go for any extended period, kind of getting only 5 hours of sleep a night, I will absolutely start to burn out like anyone. But I'm not a 10 to 12 hours a night person. And the longer the day is, the more I can get done, essentially. I might set my alarm for, I don't know, 7 a.m. And absolutely I'll be awake at 6 thinking like I'm burning daylight. Let's go get some stuff done. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, whereas I am definitely an 8 to 9 hour like little hibernate, and then I'm like ready for the day.
It's
Like,
not a bad thing. Sometimes I feel like I should get more sleep. Yeah.
otherwise, I feel like my brain cogs just aren't turning.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people are different, like sleep
Yeah.
schedules and patterns. So yeah. So alongside all of that, somehow you've been writing alongside your other endeavors. Tell us about your current work or your current works in progress.
Yeah, so a lot of this is linked to the PhD at the moment. And I imagine, like most writers, I wish I could dedicate more time to my own writing. I always feel like I'm just not writing enough. And again, it's entirely my fault. I know I take on too many things, too many jobs, too many sports, too many hobbies. But as you're probably starting to gather, that's just the kind of person that I am. I could stop doing everything else that I do and just write, but I don't want that. I wouldn't be happy with that. I'd be happy that I was writing more, but then
Yeah.
I'd be unhappy that there were so many things that I want to do and I enjoy doing that I'm neglecting.
Yeah.
So with the time that I do manage to carve out, like I say, my main focus is the PhD. It's a practice-led project focusing on short story cycles. I'm currently writing for that a dystopian short story cycle focusing on bringing the genre into the 21st century. And maybe I won't be any more specific than that because we'll see where it ends up. Because it's changed a few times already, as anyone who's completed a PhD will know. I've also written quite a few standalone short stories, and off the back of the research I completed in my first year, I wrote a novel entitled 10 Years, which I've got out with some publishers at the moment. And actually, that's an important point. A lot like many of our submitters, kind of throwing that work out into the void. I'm hopeful it will find a home somewhere. And I think and I hope that it's comforting for our writers and our submitters and our readers to know that I know our other my Superlatives other editors as well, we're often in exactly the same boat as them, sending our work out for submission. And I can only hope that when they send their work to Superlative, it doesn't feel like they're just shouting into the void. We work, and I know you work very, very hard to make sure that's not the case. We want it to be a personal, engaging experience for the writers and not just, well, I'll send my work and maybe get an AI response rejecting me in 6 months. Because I don't think that's what this process should be, which
No.
we've talked about at panels and at festivals and at conferences before. And I think the onus is on us to do better, to do more than that.
And it feels more human as well when you can provide that time to give a response, saying, with some feedback as well. I know that the editors,
Yeah,
put in personal feedback as to what they liked, what they maybe didn't like or could be improved. But,
yeah.
good because it feels like you're coming away with something rather than just kind of like it got rejected. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely, absolutely. And that personal feedback, our editors provide that personal feedback on every piece, and I always do my best to pass that on to the writers because it obviously helps me make decisions about the journal, about what we select, and about what becomes a runner-up and whatever it might be. But I want to pass that on to the writers because it's important to get feedback on your work, and I think the writers deserve that. We should be providing that, I think. And B, we don't just want AI responses saying, "Oh no, thanks, try again next time." AI definitely has its place, but in a world where we're all in danger of being replaced by AI essentially, and this has been a big thing in the writing community, obviously this past month, 6 months, 12 months. This original creative work that people are producing and that people pour their hearts and souls into, essentially, that sounds very dramatic, but that is essentially what it is. They should get a personal response. They deserve that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feels more enlightening at the end of it,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
definitely.
Finally, what's in store for the future of Superlative? What do you have in store for us, aside from, of course, complete literary world domination?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Obviously, yes, complete literary world domination. That's
taking
next, the
over.
next big thing on the list. But as you know all too well, I'm always coming up with new ideas, waking up having brain waves that are either brilliant or just chaos. New ways that we can make Superlative better for the readers and the writers, because that's the main thing essentially. And you know this better than anyone, Hannah, because you're the one who has to help me find reasonable ways to bring these things to life and not just let's create this new thing on top of everything else that we're doing completely out of nowhere. And it's lots of things, bigger prize pots, more publishing opportunities, more of these recorded author conversations and podcasts with more writers and authors and academics, more events and live conversations, hopefully this in person at literature events, anything that I and that we, of course, think is worthwhile. But I suppose overall, the main goal is to publish and continue to support new and emerging writers in the community around the world, promoting them as widely as we are able. And that, I suppose, sounds like a sales pitch. So to make it more specific, in 2026, that means publishing not just writers' individual poems, which we will continue to do, but also poetry pamphlets. We've got our first pamphlet set to be released this summer from one of our writers. And beyond 2026, I want us to become an indie press that publishes novels. But I want us to always still remain faithful to the journal as the backbone of who we are and as where we started.
Yeah.
And I know this will be your favorite bit. Also, I've saved this for last because I think it's going to become the most important thing for Superlative's future growth and future success. I want to bring more people on board like you, Hannah, to be honest. So I genuinely believe that kind of hands down, the most important thing to consider when you're sharing your goals, and in my experience, this is how it's been, working with other people on your project, is how passionate they are about it. I know how lucky I am that you're so passionate about Superlative because I absolutely wouldn't be able to run it without you. So, as we continue to grow and, as you say, achieve complete literary domination, one of my main priorities is to bring more people on board like you. And that includes obviously editors, maybe publishers in the future, obviously all with their illustrations. And if I do that, I know that if I've got passionate people working with me, Superlative will only go from strength to strength. And that's what we're doing, that's what we're seeing, and that's where I want us to keep going.
Yeah, I've been very grateful to be on this journey with you. Obviously, I've known you longer than what I have done working for
Yeah.
you. I know I've talked about how enthusiastic you are, all the things you do. It's just really endearing to be able to work on this with you and see your passion and kind of catch that passion. It's very contagious and very good. And yeah, I'm just as grateful to be on this journey, you know, to be supporting Superlative and watching it grow.
Yeah, no, good, and I have no doubt it will continue to grow. Look at and like we said earlier on, you've come on board in this past 12 months. It's not really been that long, but you've come on board full time within this past 12 months, which it's incredible that we've got the ability to do that. And I was really keen to bring you on board full time because I knew how much you could do for the journal and how much it would push Superlative forwards. And we've definitely seen that in many different ways. Obviously, there's metrics and things that we can measure and all of that, but it's so much better and bigger, and we're able to offer so much more, even in just the very short space of time that you've been on board full time. And now, hopefully, that I can also commit more of my time to it. Hopefully, we'll just see it take off, and we'll be able to, like you say, dominate and conquer the literary world, and be able to spread the news of all our writers as far and wide as we possibly can.
Will be unstoppable.
We'll be unstoppable. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. But no, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Hannah. I think using this was a brilliant idea, and this was entirely your idea, actually. I should point out this kind of little mini informal conversation slash interview between us rather than between us and somebody else to kind of commemorate this 6 year marker. It's almost to the day, isn't it? Almost to the day, this 6 year point of Superlative kind of getting started. I think before we know it, we'll be at the 10 year mark, and we'll be doing this again, and we'll be pulling that face again in 10 in however many years time, thinking how did we get here, and how has it got so big now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very, very much, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.